Thank you, everybody. Aloha mai kākou. Mahalo for being here. My name is Gabby, and I'm a PhD student in the American Studies department here. And it's my honor to introduce our speaker, Brandy Nālani McDougall. So hopefully some of you have taken her classes or will take one of her classes. She is an associate professor specializing in Indigenous Studies in the American Studies department. Some of her classes include AMPS 220, Introduction to Indigenous Studies, AMPS 405, Indigenous Literature and Film, as well as AMPS 620, Indigenous Identity. Her current research focuses on the rhetorics and aesthetics of Indigenous women's activist fashion in land and water protection movements. Kula McDougall is from Kula, Maui. She is of Kanaka ʻŌiwi descent with Hawaiʻi, Maui, and Kauaʻi lineages, as well as Chinese and Scottish descent. She is the author of several poetry collections, The Salt Wind, Makani Paʻakai, and most recently, Āina Hānau, Birthlands. She has also co-edited Huihui, Navigating Art and Literature in the Pacific, it's an anthology focused on Pacific aesthetics and rhetorics. A former Mellon and Ford postdoctoral fellow, her monograph, Finding Meaning, Kaona in Contemporary Hawaiian Literature, released in 2016, was awarded the 2017 Beatrice Medicine Award for Scholarship in American Indian Studies. And a Palapala Poʻokela honorable mention. McDougall also co-founded Hawaiʻi Press, an independent press dedicated to publishing creative works by Indigenous Pacific Islanders, and serves on the American Quarterly Board of Managing Editors, as well as the board of the Pacific Writers Connection. Finally, Brandy has the distinction of being the current Hawaii State Poet Laureate, a position she will hold until 2025. Can we please offer Brandy a warm welcome as she shares from her newest poetry collection, Āina Hānau, Birthland.
Mahalo nui, Gabby, and mahalo nui to our collaborating departments for putting this together in this whole speaker series. Mahalo nui to all of you for being here. Excuse me. I feel like as a single mom, I'm always like recovering from something or just about to get something, and sometimes they merge into the same thing. So just to warn you, little disclaimer as I share some poems today, which so this collection, Āina Hānau, Birthland, was 15 years in the making. So it had been 15 years since my first book, which was published in 2008. My first book, Makani Paʻakai, Salt Wind, really was a reflection on, I would say, ohana and identity, but also trying to it was my journey of reconnecting with ancestral mo'olelo, with Hawaiian culture, and all sorts of things that had really, I think, I'm not sure how to put it, but I guess had been damaged, had been wrecked really through colonial trauma. And then it was also my journey of being able to really try to make sense of and heal from personal and family trauma also. So that book was very personal, but it was also about my younger self. This book, 15 years later, is about what it has meant to me to become a mom after all of that. And what does it mean to be a mother? And I don't only mean to be a mother biologically, but what does it mean to be a mother and think of what you want to pass on, to the world, and how you want to, share your aloha and nurture others. So whether it's kaumana or students or, nieces and nephews, or, all of our relations, right? you know, what does it mean to put that mothering energy into the world? And I think we're living in a world where we all really need that. We need that now. Yeah. So Āina Hānau, which can be translated just very outright as Birthland, is a term that was also used in the 19th century to refer to Hawaii also as country. Okay, so I think that's an important element to think about as I share some of these poems. So there's a really strong, you know, aloha Āina element to this too. But to think of Āina Hānau is to think of more than just being a place where you're born. It's a place where you are born from. And to recognize Āina as a makua, as a parent, as well as a kupuna, as an ancestor. Āina is something, is a force, is an energy that raises you just as your family members raise you too. And I wanted to recognize that, and I wanted to also honor the ways in which I, at this point in my life, have also served as an Āina Hānau, you know, for my own children too. So all of that together. This book comes together kind of thinking about, I guess, as part of all of that, what I would like to pass on, also things I would not like to pass on, things that should be cycles that should end, you know, but also new cycles and new beginnings too. Okay, so mahalo nui for joining me here today as I share, you know, some of these poems. Okay, some of them will require some audience participation, so get ready. Okay, all right. All right, I'm going to start with the first poem in the collection, which is called Ho'iho Ika'iwi Kuamo'o. And this is something that Pele tells her sister Hi'iaka just before she sends her on a journey to Kauaʻi to fetch Lohiau. I'm seeing a lot of people like, yeah. And it's basically like, hey, don't forget, come back, yeah? You know, you know, don't go out there and forget where you're supposed to come back to, right? And it is literally, you know, return again to the backbone, return again to your ohana, you know, return again to what matters. The iwi kuamo'o is the spine, yeah? And so thinking about like, what does it mean to return back to what gives your life form, right? What holds you upright? I bring you coral, bleached, empty of color, a calcified kukui husk, palm-sized red and purple pohaku, rounded by the broken bones of fish and reef, the coarse sand still resembling shells. To remind you we have always been part ocean, part land, that the moon will teach us again the right words just beneath the water. To know each kind by shape and color from the Pali's vantage, to call out for the others, to net, to return. This next one is Āina Mauna. As I mentioned before, this one will require you to join in if you feel so moved, and you will know when to join in. Āina Mauna. So Āina Mauna is just a term that is used to refer to mountainous regions. I actually kind of have a little bit of that definition kind of worked into the poem itself. But it also is recognizing that Mauna are so important to our lives and so important to who we are as human beings, so important to our lands, okay? Aloha no e poli ahu lilinoi wai au kaho pokane mo o ina nea mo o kipahulu Maui mamane ahinahina kalamoho o lalii iwa iwa, piliuka, ahea hea, pukiave, ma ohi ohi, noho anu, o hello papa, ena ena, naio, aku aku, pamakani, o hello, lama, ohia, anunu, pavale, nae nae, aali'i, ha ha, ku kainene, ama'u, palila, amakihi, apapane, alawahio, i'iwi, elepaio, akio pola au, ua'u, upe'ape'a, kiwikiu, nene, me pueo. These islands are and will always be the nu'u of submerged Mauna, rising from and rooted in Moana, in Lipo. Because our Mauna are piko, between Honua and Lani, between Vai and Kai, between Po and O, because our Mauna are kumu, of air and water, of thick forests crowned with winds and mist, because our Mauna are a kua, unraveling all storms. Mauna, a mountain, the inland part of an island, where land rises on all sides from the sea to the center, a mountainous region, the name of the hard stone from which ko'i are made, also large, swelling, extensive, nui, ma hua hua, to grow strong, to accrue, prominent, not to be mistaken with ma'una, as in mai mauna. Don't waste or dispose of uselessly. When you stand with Mauna Kea and Haleakala, your breath becomes a warm mist carried by cold winds. The Mauna teach you to rise, how to become Aohiwa hiwa. You hover, swallow ice seeds until full, descend with thunder, lightning, rain, falling and rising again. At the base camp, we went to noon and evening aha by the kupuna tent, and in between, to classes at Pu'uhuluhulu, where our kama drew pictures of aloha Āina in the keiki tent, then ate and napped on blankets, their hands cradling pohaku born from the Mauna, the pohaku guarding their dreams. True, that the whole world depends on native bodies eating stones, linking arms to entangle our roots to face their guns, hoses, tear gas, tasers, batons, dogs in prisons to stop their bombs, pipelines, bulldozers, saws, earth diggers, drills, cranes, toxic dumps and spills. A thin line of native bodies is often all there is, and yet we are as immovable as Mauna. 2019. There have now been 5 generations of Kanaka ʻŌiwi protecting the malu of Āina Mauna. They saw thousands of us, aloha Āina, kapu aloha, shout, "Ku kia I Mauna, ku kia I Mauna, ku kia I Mauna." But there were thousands and thousands more behind us that they couldn't see. And there are thousands and thousands more to come. Hello. Don't be afraid to shake up Kaikendall a little bit. It's okay. Okay. All right. Okay. I wanted to share this poem, which it's always a difficult poem for me to share because it's for my papa who passed away in 2018, and he was the heart of our ohana. I had the honor of being his primary caregiver before he passed away. So this is called The Map, and it's for Clifford Nahinu Kekaoha. It's also for A'apueo, Haleakala, and Hanalei. and Hanalei was his Āina Hānau. This was always the map from pole to pole. You begin here. E ha'alele Maui kalipolipo. The old roads must be there, moonlit enough to walk. Here is when I think your favorite mele is Hanalei Moon, since you played it on the organ most nights before bed. I played with dolls on the floor as you hand wrote the notes onto the manuscript paper above me. When you sang the words to find the right chords. Here was where you grew up, where you said every ohana had their own lo'ikalo, amala. Here is where you made butterfish and poi, the eggs with salted water and poi, when I was sick, where you taught me to twirl the poi on my spoon and kahi the bowl. Here was when we laughed and listened to the Olelo Hawaii tape, asking each other, no hea mai oi, ma hea ko Āina Hānau. When you heard I was going to Hanalei, you drew me a map of what you remembered as a child before you left with your ohana. Here is when you asked if I could find your brother's grave. I found him with your map. It was by the church where the tea grew thick and wild, and the ie climbed up the trunks of so many trees, and the forest felt like it would reclaim him. Here is when you tried to send me poi in Aotearoa twice, where you planted kalo, avocado, orange, jabong, maia, and hung the clothes. Here is when you were maybe 4, the youngest keiki of 5, when you were made to speak English only, though your mother's first language was Cantonese and your father's was Olelo. Here's where you joke that everyone needs to be careful what they say around me because it could turn into a poem. Here is when I was 4 and told you the Haole girl next door, and you told the Haole girl next door to apologize to me for throwing water in my face. You were watering the plants and asked her, what's the matter with you? Well, how would you like it if I did that to you? Here's where you teach me about germinating seeds, algebra, how to give and take a joke, how blue light is carried and scatters. Where we read books of mo'olelo together, where I can't help but think so much of you is a poem. Excuse me just a sec. Where you tried to grow beans, squash, grew protea to sell wholesale, and sprayed pesticides again and again to save them. When you told me I couldn't have an allowance like the Haole girl next door because I get fed, clothed, sheltered, and loved. And in return, I should learn to see what needs to be done for our ohana and just do it. Here is when you asked me to help you get up, where you watched from bed as Hanalei flooded, the church steeple and roof of your old school resting just above the alai water, as the lepo bled into the bay. That summer was Bella. I got that portable air conditioner because the fans just blew hot air around you. Here is the first time I had to help you in the bathroom, where I made the bad joke that I'm relieved that you're relieved. It was pretty bad. And you groan laughed as I told you, you're the only one who would ever get that, as bad a joke as that is. Here's when you fell, when the carpet became too slippery for you to walk on, where you mixed the poi and kept the bowl full, when you descaled and fried a kule, scraped the outer skin of cooked kalo and sliced the i'o, the last turkey you roasted on the Weber, the last 5 meat stuffing, the last pot of chook. Here was when you stopped playing the organ at night. I called the hospice nurse because you were sleeping too long. You woke up, joked with her, and later when I walked her to her car, she told me, it's good for you to sleep. that I have to help make you comfortable. I have to face, you don't have much time here. Here is when you asked to call the folks from church, where you sang Hanalei Moon with them before their blessing. Here is where I became strong enough to hold you, to turn you, to carry you. And when you stopped asking me to help you get up. Here you asked if I was happy. Here you asked if I was sure I was happy. It was Poʻakahi when the last hua'olelo you learned was lava. Just a little boy, no more medicine, lava already, you said. Po'alua, when I started sleeping in the chair next to your bed because there was a ghost you kept seeing in the corner. Po'akolu, when you slept most of the day, where I realized too late that there were too many lasts in the past few years and days. Po'aha, when you seemed like yourself again and asked me to wheel you outside on the deck to see the sky and haleakala and the ahi-ahi as the moon was rising. Finally, a cool breeze as you looked over that darkening Āina of fruit trees and flowered green you planted, orange-pink streaks piercing the clouds as the sun sank. Hualava. Hoalima, when you kept sleeping and started gasping like ohe lava. Hoa ono, when you stopped it all, when all of us were out of the room, when all of us thought there'd be more time. When ohe lava kamanava. We thought we'd be with you when you end and begin. Lava pono ole kia mau huolelo e hano I ko Āina Hānau. E hano I ka Āina Hānau. Au I ho'okumu ai no ka ohana. This was always the map from pole to pole. The roads are said to edge toward Alele, overlooking the ocean. Alele in Lahaina. You would have walked down the mountain from A'apueo. E ho'i Maui ka uli uli. I'll look for you here, where, when, and there. Hello. All right. This poem I need to share. I never know exactly how to read it. And I think when I've read it only twice, and I read it a little differently each time. So I think this time will be different again. And we'll just see. Okay. All right. It's called Real Gestate. Okay. And I was trying to be fancy with my title. Because the G is in parentheses. So it's meant to be real estate and real gestate. Right. This was actually the most recent poem that I wrote that made it into the book. So I got to slip it in toward the end, but it was really reflecting on a lot of my time being newly a single mom at the time. So every person who I speak to who shares with me that they have also been a single mom, or they are also a single mom, has shared with me that the first year is really the hardest. Yeah. And so this was written in that first year. So just wanted to share that context. Things have, just to let you know, things have settled down a bit. I mean, they're still crazy, but they're not as, okay, anyway. This is called Real Gestate, okay? Or real estate. As in not imagined, fraudulent, or illusory. as in property consisting of land and or buildings, as in assets, an extensive area of land and money owned by a person, especially at death, as in possession of land by virtue of a legal document, as in by law, by paper, by lethal force if necessary, and it's always necessary. As in carrying a life in your womb, as in feeding that life from your body, as in feeding a life from Āina after she, he, they have left your body. As in deeds are written to record and prove the ownership of Āina, as in deeds have been stolen, changed, or lost without kupuna knowing, or because they couldn't pay the taxes, or for food, or because they were too trusting, and no matter which, were too ashamed to fight or didn't think they could. As in who will be, are, and have been squatters, occupants. As in who will be, are, and have been owners, discoverers. As in what is real. As in ʻŌiwi can be heirs to Āina, we didn't know we had until we see letters declaring adverse possession from Carl Smith Ball LLP on behalf of developers. As in US property law legalizes historical and ongoing theft. As in US systemic racism and colonialism determine property values and who can qualify for mortgage loans. As in at the time of this writing, Hawaii is the most expensive fake state in the United States. As in the median price of homes in 2021 was $1.06 million, up 22% from 2020, and is much higher as I read this. As in home equity appreciation on stolen indigenous land is the single greatest source of American wealth, accounting for 34% of US household net worth. As in how we must buy Āina, we can't afford. Āina, we must protect. Āina, e ola, e kanu, Āina, so those who lived Āina in our wombs will know Āina. Here is Ohana. As in Hawaii's #1 and 2 economic industries, tourism, and the US military increased inflation, housing prices, and the overall cost of living. As in, I had the real cost benefit analysis because the only thing they tell us is everything Makani. As in vacation rentals earn more money than the regular rentals. So makes sense that the few long-term rentals that stay, they inflated. As in almost 25% of homes over here are bought by out-of-fake state peoples, and plenty stay tourists buying vacation homes they go and visit only once a year. As in thousands in the military who no live on base use housing allowances they get to rent off base, and because the allowances stay above fair market rents, they can edge out local renters and drive up rental prices. As in the military does live fire training, burning, bombing, shooting on land that could grow food or have real affordable housing. As in, somebody please let these politicians know that affordable housing not affordable if we cannot qualify. As in Hawaii is the second most expensive fake state for renters. It's also fake rent too. As in Aiehea, the back rent, and not just 5F owed to us ʻŌiwi. As in ʻiwi are sacred, must be treated as sacred, must be planted in sacred Āina, as in o Honolulu ka Āina Hānau o kuʻumau kamaliʻi, and their ʻiwi have been in my freezer since they were born, moved from freezer to freezer, from rental to rental, as in they are now 9 and 6 years old, and I have to move their ʻiwi sometimes as I search for meat to defrost for dinner or for the popsicles my oldest daughter loves. As in, I am a single mom raising 2 girls, renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Honolulu, and despite being a tenured professor at UH, half my paycheck goes to rent alone. As in, the other half of my paycheck goes to food, gas, utilities, medical, dental, insurance, and preschool tuition. As in, I see their ʻiwi every day behind the popsicles and meat, and must resist thinking of their ʻiwi la'a as popsicles or meat. As in, on most days, I feel farther from Āina than ever before and think, please don't let my daughters see their own children's ʻiwi in their freezers. Please let them know the malu of Āina, the Kuleana of Āina. Please, please, please. As in, at least I have a freezer and can, for now, afford meat and popsicles. As in, ku'uewe, ku'upiko, ku'uiwi, ku'ukoko. As in 46,255 ʻŌiwi applicants who meet the high 50% blood quantum criteria in the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act are waiting on the list, most for decades. As in, if you were awarded a residential lot, you pay $1 to lease the land, but need to also afford a 10% down payment and qualify for a mortgage of $300,000 at least to build a house or to purchase one from a developer. As in, if you die, your spouse and children must prove they have at least 25% blood quantum to inherit the house you own on the lot you lease, or they will lose the land and the house, since the land is what matters and none of you ever really own the land. As in, their children and their children and their children and so on will need to maintain that minimum 25% blood quantum to remain in the house on the land, and like you, will need to choose who to have children with accordingly. As in, Hawaiian homeland lessees pay property taxes based on fee simple property valuations, but are not allowed to access or benefit from that equity. As in, at the rate DHHL has developed residential lots over the past 30 years, it would take 182 years to meet the demand for those on the wait list now. As in, 95% of applicants on the wait list will die waiting for land. As in, at the time of this writing, the fake state settled a lawsuit for $328 million for mismanagement of the public lands trust, but the amount of damages each beneficiary is owed still needs to be determined, though you know it will not be enough. As in, aren't we all on a wait list? As in, my daughters are the beautiful mo'o of all their kupuna, Kanaka ʻŌiwi, Chamorro, Chinese, Scottish, and more, and not mathematical equations and the racist fraud that is American blood logic. As in, I was 36 and hapai with my first keiki in a birth class for ʻŌiwi ohana when I learned our kupuna planted our ʻiwi in Āina, so Āina would always be part of us. As in, neither my ʻŌiwi mother and father nor my ʻŌiwi grandparents learned the importance of planting ʻiwi, and I don't know how far back we go without ʻiwi kanu. As in, conflicts over land have led to oki in our ohana. Uncles, aunties, cousins, sisters, brothers, we just stopped knowing. As in, who was left what, and who should have been left what, and who was promised what, and who has what now. As in, who can afford to keep Āina, or who is least likely to lose Āina through divorce or debt. And there was never enough Āina for everyone. We were all sheltered once, fed from our mother's Āina. As in, those of us who have been able to keep ʻiwi know we need Āina to kanu, and without Āina, we keep their ʻiwi in our freezers or our sheltered families' freezers, hoping we have Āina someday. As in, for those of us who don't have ʻiwi kanu, are we doomed to always feel buried and not planted? As in, na'ewe o ka ʻaina. As in, Kanaka ʻŌiwi have the highest poverty rates of the 5 largest race groups in the fake state. As in, the per capita income for ʻŌiwi was $20,664, or 31% below the fake state average in 2018. As in, nearly 50% of sheltered ʻŌiwi households experience problems of affordability, overcrowding, or structural inadequacy. As in, over 50% of all unsheltered people in Hawaii identify as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. As in, Hawaii's unsheltered people are criminalized and incarcerated for sitting or lying down on sidewalks, or even just walking around peacefully in many Hawaii neighborhoods. As in, unsheltered people have been found to live 30 years less than sheltered people here. as in unsheltered people in Hawaii are made out to be criminals, druggies, and crazies that need to be hidden or locked away, since we're all supposed to be happy colonized natives here, when they are both the survivors and the evidence of real violent crimes. As in, we need an unsheltered ceremony to redline the violent lie of this American dream. As in, the US is built on the lie of white property rights over native lands and BIPOC women, queer and disabled bodies, labor, creative and intellectual cultures, and yet there is no safety for ʻiwi from being dug up, removed, destroyed without being part of that lie. As in, only now can I admit that I have stayed in abusive relationships for financial security and the promise of home ownership. As in, I have a history of building homes with dysfunction and denial. As in, doesn't everyone in Hawaii, everyone in the lands known as the United States? As in, what would my life have been like if my ʻiwi had been planted? As in, our ʻiwi house the mana of mother and child. As in, ʻiwi are planted in ceremony to tie that child to that Āina, to give them their Kuleana to that Āina, to guide them always toward that Āina. As in, how else will our keiki know Āina Hānau, Āina aloha, Āina mo'o, Āina and who we are? As in, my dream is for my kamali'i to know belonging without this kind of longing. As in, my poina, we were all sheltered once. We were all sheltered once, fed from our mother Āina. Aloha. Right. I'm gonna switch over to so I have the poem, or the book is written in 4 sections where I'm kind of exploring like different aspects of both emotionality, but also thinking about movement from mountain to ocean as well. And so there's a way in which I was really interested in thinking about emotional landscapes as well as just Āina itself. So there's a range of things in here, but I wanted to share, let's see. Yeah, so there's this little poem that I wrote. It's called Star Spangled Banner. And I wrote it after, so I was teaching at Kamehameha at the time that I wrote it. So I taught at Kamehameha Kapalama campus for a couple years before working here at UH. And oh, it was such, you know, whenever, oh, so I should also mention, one of my dear mentors, my dear kumu, was Haunani K. Trask. And she would tell us about, you know, how she never stood up whenever the Star Spangled Banner went. And she went to a lot of volleyball games, UH volleyball games, because she loved the like wahine volleyball. And she said, yeah, watch them. You should try it. You guys should try it. Go to the game. This is her saying this, right? Go to a game, any game, and when they start playing the Star Spangled Banner, just keep sitting. Just keep sitting. And she's like, man, people get so pissed off at you. She's like, people are like going in your face, like, why aren't you standing up? And she's like, yeah, it's like the whole world's gonna fall apart because you just kept sitting down. And I love that because I'm like, yeah, what if the whole American colonial world fell apart? Because we all just kept sitting down. Like, how easy would that be, right? But you know, you feel it everywhere, right? And you can still relate to that, even though there are people like you know, who take the knee, you know, very publicly. You still feel that sense of like, no, everybody needs to, you know, everybody needs to stand up for this. And I definitely felt it as a kumu at Kamehameha, where they'd play it during graduation. We were all expected to stand up, and it feels horrible every time I do. It just feels horrible. And so I wrote this. This is my, like, I guess my ku'e, even though I stood up for that graduation time, right? I felt like I need to just write about this feeling and how I feel about it. And it was something to ku'e. So this is called Star Spangled Banner. A betrayal to stand with your hand over your heart and sing the song of the country, occupying your country. To read every star on the flag above your country's flag and see the last one there, small, white, and pointed, stitched into the blue with a thin thread, as if it has always been that way, as if it can never be undone. I'm tempted to read a poem I wrote for Haunani, but it's also a long one. Yeah, I haven't read it in a while. Okay. Yeah, you can see I didn't need much coaxing. Maybe I even said that, so somebody could say it. Okay, okay, this is called The Second Gift, and it's for Haunani. And there's several epigraphs in it that quote from her. And it was written for me, I guess, reflecting on just this amazing graduate course I took with her when I was a PhD student here. And it was all on revolutionaries. I mean, come on. You take a class with Haunani K. Trask on revolutionaries? What? Like, I was in a dream, okay? So, yeah. So this was kind of reflecting on that, and still like just so inspired by a lot of the people she had us read too. So this is Haunani. The first gift of Western civilization was disease. The second gift of Western civilization was violence. And this poem is called The Second Gift. Now this is Malcolm X. I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight. For over 4 generations, they have said we are a people with a history of violence, accustomed to the dark, cold cell, remedial in mind and body. They write of how we killed infants, practiced human sacrifice, incest, how our kings and queens were alcoholic, inept dictators, how we own slaves, how disease comes with darkness, how they must save us from ourselves. And we take the new tongue and its historical revisions, the low test scores, the longer sentences, the water shortages, the paid off politicians, the third part-time job, the cancers and the radiation, the diabetes and the amputations, eminent domain and adverse possession, the overruling of all our objections, because now their violence is all we know. We are not American. We are not American. We are not American. Haunani K. Trask. Violence is more than lodging bullets into brown or black bodies, but also burning sacred valleys, stabbing tunnels into mountains, damming streams, building telescopes on our mauna, dumping poisons into oceans, overdeveloping Āina, bombing and buying islands. Violence is Arizona jail cells, GMOs, and unearthed ʻiwi waiting under a Walmart ramp, in boxes, in museums, in a church basement. Violence is what we settle for because we've been led to believe green paper can feed us more than green land. Violence is what we're used to as they measure our blood to wait decades for $1 a year lease, when we forget how we once fed and healed ourselves, how our mouths hold life and death. We are no longer shocked by raids on what is left in the pitched tents and tarps, our evictions from beach to beach and park to park, the poverty of unfurling fists open only to the smallest of handouts. Violence is believing you are in the United States, driving on a highway built over the sacred, carrying artillery to scorch the sacred, so more sacred lands can become the United States through violence. Don't let anybody tell you not to be angry. We have every right to be angry. This is our country. Haunanike Trask. You were born into captivity, a native in a racist, anti-native world, and yet they called you racist. They hate you like they have hated every warrior before you. This helps them bear the weight of dominion, helps them keep their vacation houses, golf courses, hotels, and bases, helps them feed their children denial, so as adults they too can say, don't blame me for what happened 100 years ago. They must keep believing that the United States is our country, and not just the country that occupies our country, Hawaii. It always seems impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela. You tell us you are not a racist because you fight racism. You are a warrior. And you train more warriors. Show us how to sharpen and land words like spears, how to catch their spears and hurl them back. You call us the spears of our nation. Assure us decolonization is all around us. You guide us to the rope of resistance so we can weave the newest strands together under a sovereign sun. And so we tell our children tell their children, and their children tell their children, until our words become the chattering winds of hope that erode the hardness of violence from the earth. And we are sown back into and born from Papa Hānau Moku, green and tender once again. Oh. Okay, I'm going to shift over to the poem that, it's a very long poem, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. Don't worry. The poem that the collection is named for. For this poem called Āina Hānau, I was inspired by the Kumulipo, which is itself a long poem. I don't think my poem is as long as the Kumulipo, but I don't know. It could have been, I guess, if I kept going. But I wrote this poem thinking about, being a mom, and I wrote it out of just so much aloha for my daughters, Kaikainali'i and Ku'ule Hiva Hiva. So it's dedicated to them. And as I was writing, and I was thinking about what would I need to, what are all the things they need to know as, young Hawaiians, to connect them to Āina, to connect them to each other and our family, what are the stories they need to feel strong? What are the stories they need to, just be in awe and in wonder of our islands? And so this is what came from that. And it's partly telling them mo'olelo of Hawaii that I feel they should know, mo'olelo of Āina. It's also telling them the mo'olelo of their own Hānau, of their birth, as well. Yeah, so I'm going to read, I guess, just a couple sections, because there are 16 sections, I should say. So just a couple. Right. So this is the second section. And this one is probably the most kumulipo-like. Okay. Eia Hawaiʻi, he pai ʻaina, he mau moku, he mau Kanaka, he mau Kanaka nui Hawaiʻi e, he mau Hawaiʻi kako mau ahamau. Like you, these islands were born. They came from Kane, from Ku, from Hina, from Lono, from Kanaloa, from Haumea, from Papa, from Wakea, from Ho'ohoku Kalani, from Kaula Wahine, from Lua, from Maui, from Pele, from the deep darkness of Po, Hawaii, Maui, Molokaʻi, Lanai, Oahu, Kauaʻi, Niʻihau, and Kahoʻolawe. They fed on water, salt, and heat, crawled and then stood up in the light. They grew tall and wide and turned and slept and laughed and ate and fought and shared in black and brown and green and red. They inhaled earth and exhaled mountains, beaches, pali, and pohaku. They inhaled sky, exhaled the rains, winds, clouds, and stars. Like you, these islands were born, and every part of them born. Coral children, worm children, shell, fish, limu, grass, gourd, ocean, and forest children. Children of rock and vine and shrub and tree, fruit and fur. Water children of salt and spring. Insect children, seeded, propagated, corm children. Children who slither, crawl, cling, and creep, who curl and unfurl, who hatch, peck, bite, glide, and fly. Rooting, digging, hill-building children, hiding, peeping, nesting children, brindled, speckled, tentacled shapeshifters, those with 8 legs, with 8 eyes, those with 4 and 2, those with fins, with ʻiwi and without, tasters who sing their names, and hearers who answer or retreat, children of howl and screech, of paw and claw, blind and sighted, tail and tendril, skin and scale, web and wing, stemmed, veined, and rooted. Children o ke au iki a ke au nui, o nā mea I ke maka ia, o nā mea I ke maka ole. Older, wiser children born, breathing, long before us, born like you, like these islands. Here's another section. As it is with Mo'olelo, there are always many versions. As it is told, Haumea gives birth to Makua from every part of her body. Papa Hānau Moku gives birth to islands. Hina gives birth to Kapa, to Maui a Kamalo, and to the reef and fish. Ho'ohoku Kalani gives birth to Kalo and the stars in his body. Pele gives birth to fire, smoke, and steam, then to new black land. Hi'iaka gives birth to green, to kupu-kupu, hapu'u, palai, ama'u, ekaha, kilo, ni'au, pohole, pe'epe'e, palaho'a. And there are more mothers giving birth to everything you see and don't see. More mothers giving birth to bodies of water, of words, of darkness, of movement, of light. More mothers feeding us safety, shelter, love, beauty. More mothers who have always been from more mothers. You should know you have many mothers, and you will be mothers to many more. This is my last one. E ku'u mo'o maka I ke kihapai. May you always know these islands, like you, are more than enough. That like you, they are everything beautiful, everything buoyant. Their winds and rains and mountains, ravines and valleys, love without question. Like our islands, may you give birth first to yourselves, then love always with green tenderness, thrusting your hands into mud, opening your body into ocean, knowing these islands are here for you, for your children and their children, knowing we are these islands. For you, may there always be refuge, safety within the walls you reach, behind borders, under flags, and in your own bodies. May you always be grateful for peace, for open harbors not freely entered, for treaties honored, for nothing taken that was not first given, for ʻiwi still earthed, for new coral growth unbleached, for black cloud cover and trees, breathable air, a beach, stream, or ocean without plastic tangle or sewage or toxic seep. I wish you words and medicines that lift and heal, vegetables and fruit from organic earth, free-flowing waters from mountain to ocean, cool and clean, unowned, shared. I wish you ocean salted rocks and shells you can taste and hold in your mouth, blades of grass and ridged bark, all coolness and warmth to press to your cheek, to your lips. May you know love in every form, but always in the food you eat, that you love the crust dried poi makes on the skin around your lips, the dark green of luau, the soft steam of ulu, of uala, the way you must slurp the red wild of ohi'ai, all from Āina you've curled your toes into. May you always be full. May there be hiding places to keep you as hidden as you want, climbing places to keep you above, flying places, resting places, low-lying and high cliff caves, more places carved by winds and rains, salt and waves, fragrant jungles, terraced gardens, islands old and still being born, places where you wait for welcome, places that you know are not for you or anyone to enter, and may you protect all of those places, and may they protect you. May the wind and waves lift you up, and may you let yourself fly, wonder from a pali overlook as Iwa or Pueo circle above, or as Kohola or Nai'a breach through ocean in the distance, about lightness and sky. That you remember you can rise high above whatever may hold you down. May you hear these islands breathe with you. Let them be big enough to carry you, small enough to carry with you. May you know these islands depend on your breath, that the ocean, rains, and winds need your voice, that every green growing thing lives and births more green growing, that there is safety and warmth enough, shade enough when you need it, water, food, shelter, love, that you sleep deeply and let yourself hear our kupuna. May you know smallness, know to be careful and think of unseen workings, to remember the smallest can be the strongest, to feel you are islands like ours, not separated by ocean but threaded, your roots woven and fed by the same fire and water and salt and darkness. May you know immensity too, that even when you think you are alone, that you feel the ocean in your sweat and tears, that you watch rain wash the hillsides into a dark stream and see your skin, that the sun, moon, and stars, dark underwater caverns, underground rivers, all you see and don't see of Āina are your kupuna, your ohana in every breath. That something of you, something of all of us before, and something of all of us to come are these islands. May this always be with you. E ola mau, e ola no. Yeah. Mahalo nui.
I think we have time for one question.
Oh, am I for that? I know I just like threw it all on you guys.
I think I speak for all of us when I say we are moved beyond words, right? There's not much to ask or say after that. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much of yourself with us. I guess what comes to mind then is that, you know, for a lot of us, when we do academic work, we are doing it on behalf of our families or our communities, but there's still a layer of academia between sort of our subject matter and our personal lives.
Yeah.
And I'm so struck by how in this reading, that layer is not there. You know, it's very different to share your poetry and the ways in which it moves us here than reading an academic paper.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could just talk about that.
Sure.
And how that fits into all of this.
Sure. Well, yeah, so you can, I wanted to share sort of a range of things with you folks. So like the poem, like real estate is kind of trying to do, you know, several things at once, right? It's sharing, I think, what I felt was really important analysis. It also was really just relating a lot of my tremendous anxieties that I had, you know, kind of toward the end of putting this manuscript together, and in a new kind of transitional stage in my life. And it felt like it was all coming together, like it had to be that way, kind of coming together. I think there's ways in which in academia, we're kind of taught that we need to kind of put our personal lives sort of to the side. You know, some of us are even taught, like, you know, I think it has been taught. I don't think it's taught here, but somehow we get the idea, maybe it's in high school or even earlier, that we need to not write with I, like from the standpoint of like our personal selves, right? But then, you know, what are we losing when we do that, right? Everything political is absolutely personal, right? And it has to be. I feel like our world really depends on our kind of reckoning with that. You know, so when we hear things on the news, or if we hear, you know, like what folks are going through. So, you know, of course, you know, I'm from Maui, I'm from Kula, Maui. I know there's other Maui ohana here. You know, when everything happened with the wildfires, it was like, it was such a horrible time. And for me personally, I had just left my ohana in Kula. That was our last kind of together time before the semester was going to start, or well, before my kids had to start their school, and then our semester was going to start after that. And it was just really horrific and fearful, and like it just everything. But what helped me was actually the work that I had been doing to look at the horrible ways in which land has been managed in Hawaii under American colonialism and under you know, plantationism here in Hawaii. You know, so thinking about like just growing up in Kula, where nearly every year we had to conserve water because of drought, you know. And our ohana, I grew up on a flower farm, as you heard from one of the poems, right? And you know, we had to keep our bath water so that we could water the plants because there wasn't enough water. And just sort of thinking about like what we had to do. And I remember one summer we were on water restrictions, and it was a drought, and it happened to be we were going to celebrate my grandparents' anniversary, and so we went to the Prince in Makena to do that, which was like special, awesome place, like the place you go have brunch at the Prince, like back in the day. I don't think they even have it anymore. Anyway, but like going out there and driving out to Makena, where it's like it's all dry, and that's traditionally dry over there. And there's a golf course there, of course,
right? There's this huge golf course. And then the sprinklers are going on the golf course. And it's literally just like one of the sprinklers is over the edge and it's just running into the road. It's just totally just wasted water running into the road. And the hotels, golf courses, all that, they're never put on restrictions. It's only like local people who have to deal with that. So just kind of thinking about that, like it helped me to like be able to marry my academic side to both. And so, you know, I'd encourage people to just sort of find ways in which, like, if academic writing isn't quite working, you could also use poetry, you know, to really kind of dive deeper into another part of yourself or another side of the issue, and then think about maybe even how to marry the two, how to write a more personal essay, perhaps that also kind of brings in a lot of what you're being taught. And what you're learning and what you do as an academic. So to kind of marry the creative and the academic. I struggle with it though. I go between periods where I'm writing poetry and then periods where I'm writing scholarship because it's hard for me to do both. Otherwise, you know, I write poetry that sounds like scholarship or scholarship that maybe, yeah, isn't quite working and people are like, can you cite this? And I'm like, it's just my feeling. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I try anyway. Mahalo.
Oh, I wish we had so much more time, but I know that you all agree. We are so moved and we are so grateful for you sharing your reading with us. Please join me in thanking.